I feel like all my voice is coming from my nose. I feel like the sickness is still. I feel like I'm still down with the sickness. Do you get it?
Wah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Madness is the gift that has been given to me. Sick of us yet? Too bad. We're gonna make Disturbed references. Early aughts new metal. This is bonus experience.
Fuck. Hi, everybody.
This is Ray.
This is Monica. Dying because Ray just killed me.
Just give me something to break.
We're a podcast with a deeper look at the play experience and the finer details of running and writing games.
And we swear.
Damn bad about it.
I promise him. Okay, I'm not gonna. I don't know what that. That was like Macho Man Fred Durst. I don't know what I was going for.
I liked it though.
Hey, happy 2018, Monica.
Yeah, happy 2018. It's a new year. Yeah.
The beginning of 17, we were like the dazed, like survivors standing in the wreckage, like what? Who? How? And now in 2018, we're like fucking Ash with a chainsaw arm, and I've got an eye patch and a scar and a bandana. And I'm like grinding out my lines while I chew the scenery, like I'm here to kick ass and talk about gaming.
I've replaced one of my knees with a rocket launcher.
Whoa! Where'd you get that done?
I don't want me to tell anybody about it, so
hook me up with your guy.
All right, I'll tell you later after the show. We won't put it in the show notes.
I want a rocket in each of my butt cheeks.
Okay.
So then, if I like sit down too hard, I go like straight up into.
You'll go straight up into the ceiling?
Yeah.
All right.
I think that would be a good way to go out.
All right. If there's any way to go out, do it.
What are we talking about today?
Tonight we're talking about the art of war. I mean, the art of railroading, since we kept bringing it up in our last couple episodes.
It might be less divisive to talk about the art of war.
Might be.
Railroading is like one of those like bad words, like socialism.
Somewhere a white
railroading is like, oh, it's so complicated. No, it's just bad. Don't do it.
Yeah, somewhere a white man just recoiled.
Don't railroad me. I mean, well, I guess first we should get into like railroading. Obviously, we're gonna have a pretty lax opinion of railroading. We don't really think it's that bad, that it definitely has its place, but before we get into that, I guess we should talk about what railroading is, like what we mean by railroading.
Yeah, I think the common accepted definition, and what I would define it as well, is the point in a game at which the player's decisions and choices have been ignored in lieu of the outcome the GM wanted.
Right. Your players are considered agents in the story that you're providing for them. They're able to act on it, ideally, and cause new events and outcomes. If you are refusing to let your players have any agency by railroading them, you've basically removed their ability to take any sort of significant action. Not just their ability to make choices, but removing consequences from those choices. Kind of like running your game as though it were like a 1-star show and the players are just there to like watch you do it. Very recently I had Monica.
Yeah.
Monica, I listen to a lot of podcasts.
No way.
On my own time.
Okay.
I do. I've been known to enjoy a podcast or two.
Really?
One of my favorites is a really popular, well-liked actual play podcast.
Okay, tell me more.
I mean, I don't want to go into detail because it's extremely popular and extremely well liked.
Okay.
And I'm about to say bad things about it.
All right. Okay. Well,
I don't want to. I want everyone to know.
I've narrowed it down to 2.
I want everyone to know I love this podcast and I love the people that are in it and that take part in it and run in it. But they did an arc recently that was the GM was a first time GM and they were running Fate.
Okay.
And I had to like rage quit out of a couple of the episodes because this was a first time GM who was railroading constantly. Like, not just that the players weren't given choices, but that their choices were completely stripped of consequences. Like, they would say, okay, I'm going to do the thing. And then he wouldn't even let dice hit the table. He'd say, okay, well, you go to do that thing. And then this other person stops you. And then that would be the entirety of the conflict. And it made me extremely angry and upset. And at the end of the arc, they were like, I don't think Fate's going to work for us. I was like, you weren't playing it right, though. That made me extremely sad. So railroading is, when you think the story is more important than the characters. So
leapfrogging off of the idea of an extremely popular portrayal of D&D, and I am actually going to say the name because they're way bigger than we are, so but like, don't use Harmon Quest as a good example of how to run D&D.
Who does?
Wait
a minute, but like Harmon Quest?
Yeah, have you ever seen Harmon Quest? I love Harmon Quest. Yes. It's a lot of fun, but like, I'm gonna say that because like Spencer has to railroad them because it's a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is both a good example of like, this is railroading, but you also have to understand that in that case, like, it is a TV show for entertaining and for entertainment, and like, playing a role-playing game is entertaining to the people who are playing it because you are both the audience and the actors. And like, an outsider watching you do that isn't terribly fun. Like,
yes.
So
actual plays, they're not just thinking about the game, they're also thinking about the wider audience. So they have to think about what's going to be good radio, what's going to be good TV.
Yeah, and especially a TV show, because like, I think you can get away with more of the like, if you edit and post out all like the rolling and the arguing over what the stat means and all that stuff, like, then you can sort of string together a good actual play. But like, for TV, you have to keep it moving. So like, guys, understand that is for TV, and that like, the things the GM does to like force them into situations is because they are entertaining for a show. That is not a good example. That's not actually how it goes. Please don't actually like, please don't follow that example. Though I don't think anybody who watches Harmon Quest and thinks that that's how D&D goes is listening to our show, but hey, if you are...
I don't know.
If you are, it's not a good example. Please don't actually do that. That's cut for TV. But anyway, what's more common among gamers who are not cut for TV is that people are like, but my story! But the players are gonna mess with my story!
Mm-hmm.
I was in the official playtest for Through the Breach 2nd edition, and one of the guys in the playtest was like arguing with the developer over and over again because like, oh, if the player characters get these things, then my story. No, fuck you. More on this later.
No, fuck you. No, fuck See you. Below. Well, you have this other like cool thing that you call like, it's not railroading.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah.
For you.
Bus ticketing. I got to listen to Will Heinmarch, who is an indie author. He used to work for White Wolf, Onyx Path. Maybe he still does. I'm not 100% sure. He does lots of cool stuff on the indie side. Very much a seasoned personage in the... Wow, excuse that burp. Edit that out in post.
Hey, Margaret, edit out that belch. All right, continue. Margaret will get it.
All right, cool. He pointed out I went to see him talk at Metatopia, which is a really rad game design con in New Jersey, and anybody who's interested in game design and playtesting should totally go.
Yeah, I should find a way to attend that one of these years. That would be really cool.
You should come and stay with me and Henry.
Yeah, okay.
Just have a room.
Get the V's involved.
Yeah, we're talking about maybe not coming this year because it's sort of a pain for them to get all the way across the fucking country.
Yeah.
Anyway,
so
like, he pointed out in this discussion about like viewing the narrative as a thing you can actively mess with, because when you were role-playing, when you were playing these games, you're not creating a thing, you're not writing a book, you're not filming a movie. There's no tangible product at the end. All of you have imagined different things and like don't get anything out of it. There's nothing physical, there's nothing final. So there's literally, if you look at it that way, there's nothing stopping you from going, I don't like how this scene is resolving, let's stop, take it from the beginning again. Back it up.
Yeah, exactly. It's not like this has to have like a cohesive. It's it's a game. You could save scum it if you want.
If you want to, yeah. And in the same talk, he brought up that the game's plot itself is a course that everyone is on. It's a ride you've all agreed to take. So stop looking at the railroad as a thing that's bad. That's actually good. You want to get on the railroad. You want to go to your stop. Like, you buy a ticket to go to your destination. That gets you from point A to point B. That's the whole point of hopping aboard. And because the term railroading bothers people, I call good railroading bus ticketing, because you're not necessarily forcing someone to go down a railroad. You are offering them a trip to a place they would like to go.
Who knows how we'll get there? Let me see your ticket.
What if I offered you this ticket for free to a destination that I would also like you to go to?
Okay.
Most people take the bus ticket. There's been very few instances in which I've been like, here's a free pass to a thing that I want you to do, and that somebody didn't like go, okay.
Well, in that sense, before we get on to talking about like actually railroading, good things, we should probably develop a little more like, okay, here's the times when railroading's like bad, of course. Here's why people don't like railroading when you refer to it as such. The way you can tell that your railroading is the bad kind is you've decided that the story in your head, that the stuff you've come up with on your notes and all that is way more important than what the players want to do. As soon as you find yourself worrying that the players are messing up your plot or your characters, you know that you've got the Disneyland fun tracks, that this isn't going anywhere that anyone else wants to go to.
Yeah. You're on the bad railroad when you actively choose to invalidate your players' choices and actions for the thing you want anyway. I brought up the example that, like, the thing in video games where, like, you win the battle in actual combat and then the villain is still alive and defeats you in the cutscene. And then you're like, what the fuck? I kicked their ass.
I hate that.
Yeah.
I used all those high potions.
Right?
You still beat me.
You waste all your resources winning the fight, and then the bad guy gets to escape, or your choices had absolutely no consequences. Like, oh, he was just going to beat me anyway. Right, all right, it's frustrating. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't do the same thing in your tabletop games.
Yeah, if you're gonna do something like that, do it like rarely and make it really cool and worth it so that people talk about it, as opposed to like, yeah, he always has these fights where like the bad guy always wins, even if we like, then you're gonna be like one of those guys. Because players are able to intuit when you're robbing them of your agency, or robbing them of their agency. They will start to raise a stink about it. They will start to get upset. You'll start to see them disengaging from the table. Like, you'll know if something has gone wrong with your narrative devices. And I guess, I understand this can sometimes be like a real issue in games with a higher power level. Like the feeling of, well, I have all these spells, or I have such a high modifier, blah, blah, blah. I should have been able to do something. I should have been able to take a third option or do this or do that. And you can't really prepare for everything when you want to use this perfect set piece. I know, but there's different techniques you can use to kind of use railroading in a good way. Like the times that railroading might actually be like the way to go. The times when you want to hand them the bus ticket. Maybe they don't even know that you've put it in their pocket, but they're going on a trip.
I sometimes like to incentivize the bus ticket. Sometimes there's a thing that I really want to use and like just sort of convince somebody to go do it.
I'll just like straight up tell them, here's what's in it for you.
Yeah. Like, hey, like, if you go talk to this guy, this NPC I spent several hours thinking about. I don't say that part out loud. Usually I'm like, hey, if you go talk to like, the Duke, he'll be able to provide, resources for your army or whatever, because
give them the breadcrumbs, right, as opposed to like forcing their hand.
Yeah, like point out that like, yeah, the Duke likes you guys. You've been really successful, and like he's willing to back you, but you're gonna have to come to his court or whatever. Because I had a whole like court thing planned or whatever, and I thought that would be really cool, and I don't want it to go to waste. And I don't really want it to wind up on the cutting room floor. So I'm gonna bus ticket everybody into going there.
So you make it really worth their while.
Yeah, just make it worth their while. And like, while you can think that that's the bad sort of railroading, because sure, I'm trying to talk people into doing the thing I wanted them to do in the first place, like, it's not really also, because like, I'm making it worth their while. And if people do in fact go, no, we'd rather see like what the Baroness has to do, then I'm like, all right, well, cool. I guess I'll figure her out too. But going back
it's about being able to kind of like think on the fly.
Right, but going back to one of our much earlier episodes too, don't present a choice that's not a choice.
Right.
If there's not really a choice, don't present it as one. So these two things go hand in hand.
Well, one of the things that we've kind of glossed over so far, we kind of touched on it with the bus ticketing, like, okay, here's your ticket, we're going somewhere fun. There's some railroading like necessary to every game. You have to kind of start off a session 1 with some sort of railroading. Like the part of the social contract of the game is, 1, it's assumed all the characters are going to work together at least in some fashion. They may not like each other, they may undermine each other in certain ways, but they're going to be working together in a party. And 2, the players and you will do what's necessary to keep the game and the story going. And your end of the contract means that you're trying to make sure that those 2 points are never a bummer to enforce. But you still have to come to the table with, all right, rule number 1, how do you know each other, or how are we going to get to know each other? So you kind of have to railroad them together in the first place. And then, okay, number 2, maybe you only keep this to yourself, but like, what are we going to do? What stops my willing to pull out just to make sure that the game keeps going, that the story keeps moving?
Yeah.
Railroading's not so bad. Sometimes you have to railroad.
Yeah.
In fact, you likely will railroad on the first session, and not a lot of people are going to get pissed at you for that, because getting a whole bunch of weirdos together on day 1 of your campaign is a feat. Like if you've got, like I just started a Dungeon World game. We have an evil immolator, a good paladin, a neutral wizard, and a neutral thief, and we had to figure out how the fuck these guys knew each other. With a good paladin and then a decidedly evil character, and then these other 2 guys that are like, I don't give a fuck, one of whom is a criminal. Like, we had to figure out, like, how are you lying about this? How do you not tell him about that? Like, you've got to figure it out. Even if at any point the paladin could say, no, I'm smart enough that I would know that he's evil. But you kind of got to go along to get along for that first session.
Yeah, I think some of that also, like, getting the players to agree ahead of time out of character that, like, here's why our players or why our characters are together, and like,
right.
I think it's perfectly fine for the guy playing the paladin and the person playing the evil immolator to agree out of character that, like, our characters don't like each other. And that, like, I guess we'll get into more of, like, in and out of character divide and all that stuff, probably when we talk about diegesis and stuff like that later.
Right. The way we ended up rolling with it is the paladin is just extremely clueless and doesn't realize that this is an immolator and that he's evil. He just keeps finding him in these burning buildings and pulling him out like, oh, I keep saving you. He's just extremely dumb.
That works too.
And he loves it. He's been going along with that. He loves it.
Well, good. That sounds like you guys worked something out. That's good. And I'm not even sure that, like, players agreeing to work with each other is really railroading. I guess kind of is, but, like, that's more...
I've been in some groups where they consider that railroading. Like, no, I want to play the evil character, and I want to screw everybody over because it's going to be interesting. And yes, I know.
I hope you could hear the face I made.
It made an imprint on me.
Sure it did. I mean, just remember that as Will said, a railroad takes you to the places you want to be. It's really not bad if it keeps your players on track to their destination, and they should be plot points that everybody is invested in. Like, the bus ticket doesn't force you onto a track, it's offering you a place to go. And usually a place you want to go. Like, I mean, if someone was like, hey, here's an all-expenses-paid trip to Hawaii, you'd take it, right? Yeah,
you'd be like, sweet, when are we leaving?
Yeah, right?
Hey, here's a bus ticket to the resolution of your character's tragic backstory, and also a really cool sword. Oh, okay.
Sure.
Great.
And, like, as I started talking about earlier, I'm not above bribing people into taking a bus ticket. Like, either with something concrete, like, you'll find allies in the City of Diamonds. Like, if you're playing a game where, like, finding resources or having backup is desperate and you need that, and, like, being like, here's a tangible thing your characters are going to get in game if you go to this place. I'm not going to keep that from you. That's where you need to go to find it. Or, like, more meta, telling people, like, there's no shame in running from this encounter with the dragon. Like, if it's too hard, you guys can pull out, that's fine. Which much in the same vein of like players agreeing to work together at the beginning of the game is, I guess, sort of railroading, but only sort of.
So you would consider suggestions from the GM, like kind of like friendly reminder, you don't have to fight this thing. You would consider that bus ticketing?
It's a kind of bus ticketing. I mean,
it's a bus ticket away from the fucking dragon.
Yeah, it's so like that's more like stage direction, or like the tutorial pop-up. Then you're sort of like, hey, you don't have to stay here. This is not a thing you must do, because I feel like
press X to run away.
Yeah, I think players often feel like that they must do something. They gotta commit. If you start something, you gotta finish it. There's no backing out of it or whatever. Like, we're gonna die on this hill. And you're like, you didn't have to. You don't have to do any of this.
Yeah, I wonder where that, because anytime I read about like the systems, conflict system or something like that, the old school, like, you know, like the D20 systems don't really have a failure condition beyond you died. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, there's no like, okay, we couldn't pull this off, so we ran, or we couldn't pull this off, so we tried something else that wasn't combat. They focus so much on if the combat failed because you died, and that was the game over.
Well, yes, but really classic D&D, like basic and advanced, and all those like prior to second edition D&D. The goal was to get treasure and then bring it back to civilization. So, like, you didn't get a lot of XP for killing monsters, you got XP for collecting treasure. So the goal was to go into a dungeon, think your way through it, and somehow get all the treasure out without losing your character.
So the focus was more on the boon as opposed to just mowing down as many encounters as you could.
Right, and second edition and third edition onward is where the focus shifted more to, you get XP for killing shit.
Huh.
And I knew this because I actually really like playing basic D&D of all the D&Ds. Because if I'm going to play a 4 hit point shit farmer, I would at least like it to feel like a roguelike in which, you know, the goal is to like figure out how to block the door and keep the zombies from ripping off my flesh while I climb over them, you know, to get the pile of gold behind them, you know. And I don't fight any encounters. The point is to be clever and to think your way around traps, because if you fight them, you're gonna die.
I didn't know that the original experience was more trap-based.
It was more like thought-based.
So D&D was really more of a heist game.
There used to be like competitive time dungeons where like you and your team would try to beat the dungeon in the shortest amount of time.
Speed run your campaign.
Right, well that's why like things, I mean the Tomb of Horrors was really sort of, Uncle Gary was fed up with his players, so he made a thing that was really hard.
So that's why the traps are also fucking nasty.
Yeah. But like
not just because he wanted to screw you over, but because it was about the traps.
Yeah. I mean, that one specifically, like, fuck you, this is too hard intentionally. But there are other adventures out there, which I don't know off the top of my head, and I'm sure Henry would if he were in the room, but he's not. So, but there were other adventures out there that were intended for, like, you make your party, you play through the dungeon against the DM. There it is kind of antagonistic, where, like, you are trying to defeat the monsters, get the treasure, get out as fast as you can.
Huh.
Okay. And, like, that was a thing, and in fact, Henry and a bunch of our friends, many years ago, used 4th edition to do the same thing, to play 10
How
dungeons.
did it translate up into 4th edition?
Fine. In fact, 4th edition is maybe the best system to play a time dungeon.
I know 4th edition is like your 3-legged puppy that you're trying to protect from the cruelties of the world.
I know. It's actually not a 3-legged puppy, it's a perfectly fine and healthy puppy that everyone believes is a 3-legged puppy, but that's its own show.
There's nothing wrong with this puppy.
Yeah, there's literally nothing wrong with this puppy.
It's just a slightly different looking puppy.
Yeah.
It's got big World of Warcraft pauldrons, and it's doing great. Anyway,
World of Warcraft copied D&D in the first place. Anyway, that's a different topic. We're talking about railroading tonight. We're talking about railroading tonight.
So how do you railroad without people knowing that you're railroading and getting mad at you?
I don't know. I do it pretty easily.
Okay, yes, but for the people who don't do it easily...
I don't know if I could teach somebody how to be charming.
All right. Well, we talked about it earlier when we were saying the biggest thing you can do is to not actually give them a choice
Right, yeah.
in the first place.
That's fair. Okay.
Even if you try to make the correct answer to a problem as obvious as possible, if it is multiple choice, there is always a chance your players will pick the incorrect answer. Sometimes they do it out of sheer obstinance. I know, I've seen them do it. So don't make it multiple choice. Like, make it a statement or montage it and move on past whatever. Don't say, like, oh, there are 3 doors and 2 are obviously they're dripping blood and you can hear screams and one is like sunshine and flowers.
Yeah, someone's going to be like,
I don't trust that one.
I want to go down the metal door. This is clearly a trap.
Yeah.
Screaming door looks good.
Just, if you don't want to fucking deal with that, because I know they're going to pick the wrong door, just say there's only one way forward. Just don't
give them a wrong door to go down.
A lot of new DMs and GMs feel like choice just for choice's sake is like imperative to the game, but it just plain isn't. You don't have to give people choices for literally everything.
You're not a level designer.
Yes.
You're not a level designer.
You're an improv story writer.
Yeah, more or less. But as we talked about in one of our other previous episodes, if you have players who are invested because you built trust, they will accept your bus ticket because they trust you. They trust that you're going to take them to a place they want to go. And the more you build that trust, the more likely they are to do things, say things like, surprise me, which is my favorite thing people say, you know, like, and when your player says something like, surprise me, that means they trust you implicitly.
Yeah, that's the, I know you'll come up with something cool, just drop it on me. Surprise me. But, like, back to the 2 doors thing, like, the other thing that I suggested, even, I bring this up in one of our other episodes too, is that, like, if you have 2 doors and one of them is wrong and they pick the wrong one, you just move the correct answer behind the wrong door. Yeah, if you've got to have these 3 doors and they're like, I don't trust that sunshiny flower one, I think it's a trap, and they go through one of the doors that you didn't expect them to pick, just change it. Like, oh, you were right, that one was a trap. So you're so clever. And they'll feel really good about themselves, and you don't have to worry about coming up with anything new.
You could also always fill in the blanks later. So if they come back to the same junction where they had those 2 doors to go through, and they had picked the bleeding, screaming door, and then they want to go through the sunshine and flowers door, you have had all that time to figure out what's behind it. And you can always go back and fill in the spots where people were like, hey, did you tie these 2 points together? And you're like, yeah, totally. Yeah.
My plan.
Nobody will ever know.
My other 2 tricks that I really like to use now, I think are very apocalypse worldy, because the system is beautiful. I like to offer the choices up front and kind of prep them for the way to respond. Like, your character just watched some crazy shit go down and totally needs a drink. So are you going to go to some ritzy upscale wine bar, or are you going to fall into the nearest place with a liquor license? And you're making assumptions there. Like, okay, 1, your character needs a drink. 2, you're going to get a drink. 3, will it be high-end or seedy? Like, you are assuming what they would do, but if you already have that trust in place, if there's already the engagement there, they'll be like, yeah, you're right, I did see some shit. Oh, and then they have a choice where you're going to go for your drink, but you still kind of push them down this path. And the other, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that in some ways also lets your own players push the cart down the railroad.
Yeah.
You have determined the destination, right? Like, you've decided a drinking hole of their choice, and then it's of their choice and of their design.
Yeah. Yes. And then the natural kind of next fractal down from that, to let them fill in the blanks. Which, if you've got a set piece coming and you know it's going to be really fucking cool and you really want to get this bus ticket in their hand, you ask the player to help you come up with how it happens. Like, I'm trying to think of a good example. Like, if they were focusing on this one part of a quest, but they haven't heard from this other part of the quest in a while, like the Evil Merchants Guild has kind of fallen into the background. They come out of the dungeon and they find themselves surrounded by armed mercenaries from this Evil Merchants Guild. Oh, didn't you guys leave a watch? What happened to your watch? And it's like, oh no, what did happen to our watch? And then they can kind of from there fill in, like, okay, so what would have happened to let these guys actually get the drop on you? And then they kind of have a hand in their own railroading. And I think this requires probably the most trust from players if you're like dropping bombs on them, like kind of taking things a little bit out of their hands. So maybe not as useful for, say, one shots at a convention table where you don't know any of the people there and you don't know what they're willing to let slide.
Yeah, that's fair. On the same Apocalypse World thread, Apocalypse World also directs you to think off screen. That's one of those things that I wrestle with a little bit, because too much thinking off screen, like, I feel like that's a thing people can interpret as bad railroading. And then, like...
Well, how so?
Like, so if you have your, like, big bad make a major move off screen because the players chose to prioritize one plot thread over another, your players might think you were punishing them for choosing one plot thread over another.
Well, in certain games, like especially in Apocalypse World, where one of the themes is scarcity, you have a scarcity of resources, you have a scarcity of time, and if you're using the, broadcast future badness move, I don't think that's the exact, but you're like foreshadowing, like, okay, big bad's doing this, okay, big bad's doing this, and then you can make your move hard if they haven't actually like responded to it in any way. But yeah, I can see how, like, if you're working off camera and they haven't seen it happening, and then suddenly it just drops on them, they could be like, well, wait a minute, I didn't even have time to react to that one.
Yeah.
I couldn't have changed that.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Or maybe I'm just impressing my own anxieties onto other people.
What do you want? Do you want to talk about it?
Not live anyway.
Oh, okay. Well, God. Oh, God. Oh, sorry.
Both gassy tonight.
LaCroix. Or LaCroix. You swine. Isn't it supposed to be French?
It is supposed to be LaCroix.
LaCroix. What else do I have here? If you've got to do one of these sneaky railroad things where you kind of like limit the choices, try not to make it because of character skill. Don't say bad things happen because a character was incompetent somehow. This is always a bummer. People don't, unless they're explicitly like, I want my good paladin to be clueless and not know that guy is evil. People don't generally like to play incompetent characters. They like to play someone who's cool, or someone who's smart, or someone who's sexy, or whatever. And they don't want it to be like, well, I'm supposed to be the sexy one. How come this happened? I should have seduced him, or whatever. Make sure that it's about, something that would have been out of their character's control, as opposed to a failure on the character's skill.
Yeah, fail forward. If we consider
fail
forwarding a kind of railroading, maybe we should do a show on failing forward.
Yeah, that would be great. Okay, I love using that. I tried to put that into like a D20, and that was like, whoa.
Fail forward always in every game ever.
Yeah, we had one situation where we had this terrible like some sort of demon dragon. I'm not really sure what was going on, and our wizard had what was he gonna? Oh, I already forgot the name of the skill. Where he was going to try to take control of it because it was technically an elemental, and it was such a bold, fucking brassy move, and we're like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know if this is going to work. And of course he didn't. He rolled like a 3, which in D20 is like, no, nothing happens. But if you fail forward, it's going to be like, okay, well, wait, like this was such a cool idea. Like maybe you do take control of it, but it possesses you, and now you're sharing up. Like. Fail forward, so your cool thing can still happen, but at a price.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know where that accent came from.
I don't know.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't have anything to add to that. That was a good point.
I think our railroading discussion was concise.
Reached the end of the railroad. We managed to keep this to like 30 minutes, like we're supposed to.
Hey, I feel great.
Fantastic. Good job. So anyway,
I'm gonna have some more LaCroix.
Don't we? We have places you can find us on the internet now. We got some stuff. By the time this is a thing on the internet, you'll be able to reach us there.
Yeah, we have. Oh no!
Oh no!
All this stuff that I wrote down the names for the thing.
Hang on, I have them.
We're on Twitter individually. You can find us on Twitter. I'm Ray_Cole on Twitter.
I am at Zenith Sun. Zenith, like the position of the sun, and sun is in the sun. You know what? I've done that better. Like the Exalted cast.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so we are bonusexpcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, email us. Hey, what could they email us?
We welcome your polite and engaged feedback, to steal the line directly from Cameron Esposito.
I like that.
Yeah, it's a great phrase. I was like, Cameron, I'm going to copy that. You're a famous comedian, and I'm at the office talking out loud to my phone. You can also find us on Twitter, bonusexpcast at Twitter. And we will at some point have a website up and running, and also bonusexpcast.wordpress.com.
Yes, bonus experience is taken in like all its forms on all social media. So I had to put cast at the end of it's fine. That's where you can find us if you have things to add or questions or comments or I don't know, funny gifs, friend codes for games. I don't know. Slide into my DM. Like, what?
My mic just randomly decided it was not going to be plugged in anymore, despite being completely plugged in.
Uh-oh.
That's what my radio silence there for a sec was. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
But yeah, if you have suggestions for other shows, topics you'd like to hear us talk about, you can send them to any of those places.
Yeah, come take a look at all the stuff we have.
If you say nasty stuff to us, we will read it out loud on the air in funny voices.
Oh, we're totally going to make fun of you.
Oh yeah, we're really
going
to
laugh the whole way.
I guess that's it for this episode.
Okay.
We'll figure out a sign-off eventually. Good night.
We still have this is like episode 5.
I know.
What do we do? Just fucking change it if you want.
just change it if you want to.
Just change it if you want to. That's it. Thanks for listening. Take +1 forward to GMing this week. We are written and produced by Monica and Ray. Our theme song is Reuse Noise with the Light by CDK and is used under the Attribution Non-Commercial Creative Commons license. Our logo and art are by Neno Studios, Neno, and you can find them on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can earn more bonus experience on WordPress, iTunes, or wherever you get podcasts. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.